Welcome back to the 27. This is a custom default analysis for the Chevy Camaro GT4, and where better to feature it than the Old Dominion itself, Virginia International. This build was requested by MoonieGT, yes, that MoonieGT. Please be sure to check out his YouTube channel, it's one of my favorites. I think it's fair to say that he and I are both eagerly anticipating the release of Racin' USA Part 1, so we're in full Murica mode. We're going to be looking at some telemetry to see what's up with this car, focusing in on traction control and whether or not the Camaro can benefit from it. This is my first foray into the GT4 class, and it would be fair to say I have been avoiding it, but not because I dislike the class, but because the setup options are rather limited, and I didn't think that there would be much ground to gain. However, I read a lot of comments and listen to people's opinions about cars, and the Camaro seems to come up in two particular contexts. One, that it's not as competitive as the other cars in the class, particularly the 520S and especially at higher altitudes. And two, the rear has a tendency to be a bit finicky on corner exit. So I'm going to accept this challenge today, guys. The GT4 class is a heavily homologated racing series, which means each car has to abide by pretty strict rules with regards to tuning, particularly the suspensions. Simply put, you can do nothing with the Camaro suspension-wise, no spring adjustments, no dampers, not even ARBs. But moreover, homologated series use balance of performance adjustments to keep the cars competitive, to which the Camaro seems to be a big target for the Nerf stick. One of the things that BOP will adjust is the ride height, which is blank on the setup screen in AMS2, but if you look at the telemetry HUD, it's 90 millimeters in the front and 100 millimeters in the rear. With that kind of ride height, you could probably drive a McLaren underneath it. I bring this up because this means the Camaro has a very high center of gravity, which I explained in more detail in my recent Porsche Cup video, but essentially the Camaro has a lot of roll inertia that you as a driver have to come to terms with. It is also a very powerful car to offset the cornering performances of the likes of the Porsches and the McLarens. This is a true muscle car. It's not particularly made for cornering. This roll inertia in the rear leads to some traction imbalances on corner exit that sort of defines the Camaro in its default state. What's happening is the weight of the car in the rear is wobbling back and forth, the outside rear tire is loading up, the inside tire has less traction, and due to the engine power, it's causing the differential to unlock, which leads to power oversteer. You can sometimes see this in a straight line even. Normally we would be relying heavily on ride height, springs, dampers, and ARB adjustments, and doing everything possible to keep the inside rear from slipping. We can't do that with the Camaro. Looking at the rear tire temps, it also doesn't appear that the rear is too soft or too stiff either. Another way we can increase inside wheel grip is to reduce the inside tire camber, bringing more of the contact patch onto the road, but this being a default setup, it's not something that we can do. Another factor is that GT4s use hard slicks instead of softs, so the tire characteristics that you may be used to aren't there to help. So the only thing left to mitigate this as drivers, we have to counter steer, reduce throttle to bring the inside rear back within traction limits. Setup wise, we can look into the differential itself and also traction control. Traction control is pretty simple. We all know it's an electronic aid. They call it the bitch switch. But what it does is it cuts power to the drive wheels when the car detects that it has gone over certain wheel slip thresholds. Looking at the setup screen, this is precisely what we're adjusting. A traction control set to 11% will cut power to both wheels if one of the wheels is slipping more than 11%. And then up the line, 21%, 31%, you get the idea. Most cars, I set traction control at 21%. This is beyond the wheel slip grip threshold in AMS2, so you can still spin out if you're not careful. So it's not something I really think about that often. But ultimately here, the question is, can the Camaro benefit from 11% traction control? Can it keep the rear in check, and more importantly, can it be faster because of it? So let's take a look at the telemetry. Alright, so here we are with Racing Sim Tools, and you can see at the top left I registered a session with the default package, one with traction control set to 11% and one with traction control set to 21%. But before I got into the traction control adjustments, I wanted to find out if I could make the Camaro feel better on corner exit simply by working with the differential. So what I found was the best way to get the Camaro to behave was to lock the differential. So you'll see in the setup, I set the differential to 60 power, 40 coast with 10 clutch plates. I also reduced the preload quite a bit. I felt that this was the proper balance for the Camaro. After that, I tested the traction control to see if I could eliminate all of that extra wheel slip moving forward. So if you look at the times here, especially the traction control 11%, my best time was in the high 52s. My best time for the traction control set to 21% was in the low 52s. And to be honest with you, I think that's the answer to the question, is traction control faster? And that's a no. I actually was able to set a world record time here at Imola, my test track, in TT mode for you to download. Not saying I'm the fastest person in the world, but it is what it is. I think I fixed the Camaro just with the differential. But let's talk about the traction control. Why is it slower? Okay, so here we are. We're looking at the differential tab and the wheel slip and then the wheel differential percentage. So this is the difference percentage. This is basically the unlocking of the differential. So here we are at Tamburello. All of these jagged up and downs, these inhuman throttle inputs here at the bottom, that's all traction control. That's the electronic aid kicking in. You can also see it here at, where's this? This is, here's Villeneuve. This is Tosa. And then on the exit of, that's Piratella. And then the exit of the Aqua Minerales. So you can see it's active quite a bit at 11% with the Camaro. So let's cross-reference this with the 21% build. This is superimposed as green, so key your eyes to that. Green and yellow, so it's essentially. So the yellow means the differential is opening up more, but the throttle inputs remain consistent. I mean, there's a little blip here of traction control coming in. Also here at Tosa, a little blip, but not that much. You can see the throttling is more consistent. And here we are at the Piratella, a lot less traction control kicking in. So I think that's a good a visual to see what the traction control, when it's coming into effect. Now, how does it affect your lap times? Let's look at the time slip graph here. Again, we have red as the fastest time, the 21%, and then green as the 11%. Generally speaking, if you look at the time slip rate here, when I come to Tosa, or actually when I come to Villeneuve and then Tosa and then Piratella, I'm actually cornering faster with the traction control build. I'm losing time to my fastest lap time. But then the traction control kicks in and I cannot consolidate those gains. When I go through the straight after Tosa, for example, I lose all of that time advantage that I would have had, and it comes back into the favor of the of the 21%. Happens again. Here it is at Tamburello, at Villeneuve, at Tosa, at Piratella. So you could see from this point in the track at the entry to the Tamburello to the exit of Aqua Minerale, you're looking at a time slip difference of about 7/10 just through that sector. And that's with not driving through the corners as effectively with the track as I did with the traction control build. So bottom line, I would recommend not going traction control. I would recommend setting it to 21, set it and forget it. And just locking up the differential. It makes a huge difference. However, if you continue to have problems, no one's going to eat your lunch if you set it for 11. No one's going to know. So that is still an option there for you guys. But yeah, for me, traction control 21%, just like all my other cars. So that's the Camaro GT4. I bet you didn't expect me to find world record pace with it, did you? But I'm not the fastest, so I know it's ripe for the old setup snipe. In any event, I hope you enjoy the build. And if you do, don't forget to come back and leave a like or a comment. I am feedback driven, guys. We're plowing through the custom default setups, and I have some classic F1s coming your way, including the V12. At this point, Racing USA is less than 2 weeks away, so some exciting stuff to cover in the near future. In the meantime, thanks for watching, and take care.